Good evening and welcome to 1010, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. As we began reporting last week, the violence in Israel is not letting up. Both sides are accusing each other of unwarranted violence, as Palestinian knife attacks were met with Israeli gunfire, and one major motif of the conflict is misinformation. For example, one attack in the city of Hebron had vastly conflicting reports. The Israeli Defense Ministry reported that a Palestinian man tried to stab a pedestrian, but the civilian was armed and fatally shot the attacker. The Palestinian news agency, WFA, reported that an Israeli settler harassed and shot a team multiple times, with the team being left to die as Israeli soldiers prevented paramedics from getting through. The only clear information that we have right now are the numbers: 7 Israelis and 44 Palestinians killed since the beginning of this month. Sure, call the media dirty all you want for escalating these conflicts or putting undue attention on some topics over others, but remember that news media shows viewers a second-hand vista of every story. Sure, it's obviously wrong that many news sources give viewers blatantly incorrect information, but it's our job as viewers to gather different sources, critically analyze them, and finally grow as somebody more worldly than before. So, as a defender of what many like to call the trashy media, we should also blame ourselves for lazily expecting just 100% true pieces of information to arrive at our doorsteps. As Hungary closed its borders to the refugees streaming out of the Middle East, Croatia and Slovenia became the new destination for migrants. As more refugees are being rerouted from Croatia to Slovenia now, the Slovenian army fortunately offered to support in, according to the BBC, logistics, transportation, human resources, and some technical areas. 2,700 refugees arrived in Slovenia on Saturday alone, and 600 had already left for Austria. And Germany, though still the most popular destination for refugees along with Austria, is beginning to see some growing anger against sheltering the Syrians. Henry Racker, a major mayoral candidate for the city of Cologne, was stabbed in the neck in protest of Germany's open policies toward the refugees. Though very rare, political violence is still a thing in Germany. Let's hope that the disputes are settled in a more civil manner. India continues to struggle with its continuing cases of rape. The newest cases involving violent rapes of a toddler and a 5-year-old just comes a week after a rape and murder of a 4-year-old. Few men have been detained, but no arrests have been made. India's National Crime Records Bureau released figures showing over 2,000 women and girls raped in New Delhi alone in 2014. The government has increased the punishment for rape last year, but that hasn't made much of a difference in preventing these cases of sexual violence. The Supreme Court may hear about a challenge to a Chicago suburb's ban on assault weapons and extended ammunition clips, a landmark case should the court decide to rule on it, as the courts have been reluctant as of late to pass a decision on matters relating to guns and gun control. Illinois has had a complicated firearms situation as the Chicago Federal Appeals Court struck down on an appealed ban on concealed weapons, giving way to legislation that, according to CBS, gave cities around the state 10 days to come up with local restrictions on assault weapons or forfeit their right to do so. The city involved in its latest Supreme Court appeal, Highland Park, is one of about 20 municipalities in the state with strict gun regulations. Should this court go to the Supreme Court, it may lead to major changes in the interpretation of the Second Amendment. Gun control is, of course, one of the many topics involved in the 2016 presidential run. Speaking of which, the Democratic presidential debate happened on Tuesday. It was definitely quieter than the Republican one. Only 5 of the 5 candidates were there: Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, Lincoln Chafee, and Jim Webb. Although many say Clinton really carried the debate, there are equally compelling claims that Sanders shone in the debate. Many discussed issues focused more towards Clinton, including the email investigation, the Benghazi Committee, and the proposed restrictions on Planned Parenthood. But it did also give Americans a chance to be more exposed to O'Malley, Chafee, and Webb, who were more or less, unfortunately, unknown to the public before this. In a completely unrelated news, Lamar Odom, a former NBA basketball player and troubled celebrity, finally regained consciousness after 3 days of coma from an apparent overdose. Not really anything important, just the lesson is don't do drugs, I guess. Now, for actually important news, the northern Filipino island of Luzon is under attack from the super typhoon Kopu, which has powerful wind speeds comparable to upper end Category 4 hurricane of nearly 150 miles per hour. That's 240 kilometers per hour to the rest of the world. There could be up to a meter of rain and 3 meters of water in storm surges. Let's hope that there isn't as many casualties as there were from Super Typhoon Haiyan 2 years ago. California had a couple of storm cells pass through, which were by no means the strongest of the hurricanes that we've seen in the Philippines. But the weakened soil from the severe lack of rain caused monumental mudslides. Various major highways became clogged in the sludge. which instantly trapped cars and left the authorities with 300,000 cubic yards of mud and debris to clean up, which is, again, 230,000 cubic meters to the rest of the world. Some are blaming the El Nino for the increased precipitation, but the effects of the El Nino are yet to come. The real effects won't hit until January or at least November at the latest. It has been announced that the United States have set restraints on oil and gas drilling within the Arctic. Last month, the oil and gas giant Royal Dutch Shell have announced to cease its activity in the Arctic after unsatisfying test results. Although Shell spent over $7 billion on offshore development in the Arctic seas, it didn't find enough amounts of natural resources to continue the development. It is estimated by the U.S. Geological Survey that the Arctic contains 30% of the Earth's undiscovered natural gas and 13% of oil. However, environmentalists are pleased to stop the offshore drilling, which causes pollution and contamination to the natural site. Now let's go to Brian Kipp for our weekly science news. Brian?
Thanks, Andy. Fossils of modern human teeth have been discovered in China. Scientists using uranium testing methods have concluded that the teeth go back 80,000 years. Now, the out of Africa expansion of Homo sapiens have presumed to begin 60,000 years ago. However, the teeth of Homo sapiens found in China is 20,000 years earlier than the commonly accepted theory. This discovery has caused many scientists to reconsider the timeline of Homo sapien diaspora. From a BBC report, Dr. Maria Martinon Torres expressed, "We need to rethink our models. Maybe there was more than one out of Africa migration." Scientists are currently analyzing the fossils and are contributing to find out the history of human migration. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you, Brian. That would conclude the 1010 News of the Week. I'm Andy Hong. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with more of your top 10 news of the week in 10 minutes. Stay educated.